Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is Thursday, the 20th of November, 2025. So glad you're with me today. Hope you had a good day. Hope you've had a good week. Weekend's almost here. Thanksgiving 1 week from today. Do you have your turkey? And do you do Thanksgiving at home or do you travel? We have a big, like 25-pound turkey that's actually in the work freezer just down the hall because we don't have room in our freezer. And we got to figure out what we're going to do. So anyway, I hope that you have good plans for Thanksgiving, and I appreciate you being here tonight. Appreciate all of your feedback from this week. Of course, if you missed our interview with Judge Justin Boreski, you can go back and watch that. A lot of good feedback, and many of you thanking him for speaking out. I echo those words. Also, yesterday we had on Justin Lum from Phoenix to talk about his documentary about the young woman who was killed and left in a dumpster. You can go watch that. And earlier this week, we also had on the woman who turned in the man the sex offender who had horrible images and tried to molest her son. And tonight, we have another interesting topic. We have a full week of programming this week. Do you remember the Jodi Arias case? I remember. I was just brand new in news. And a new documentary has come out, and we're going to talk with Brianna Whitney. She works for Arizona's Family, the television station CBS in Arizona, Phoenix, just down the street from where Justin Lum works. And we are going to talk about that documentary, and it's fascinating what she's done. It's a whole hour that's just come out. Let me read you the background, though. Travis Victor Alexander was killed in 2008. June 4th, 2008. He was an American salesman who was murdered by his ex-girlfriend, Jodi Arias, in his house in Mesa while he was in the shower. Arias was convicted of first-degree murder on May 8th, 2013, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2015. Travis sustained 27 stab wounds, a slit throat, and a single gunshot wound to the forehead. Arias testified that she killed him in self-defense, but she was convicted of murder. During the sentencing phase, the jury deadlocked on the death penalty option, and Arias was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His death and subsequent investigation and the trial attracted widespread media coverage in the United States. I heard a little bit about this covering Daybell in Arizona. The courtroom, Judge Boreski's courtroom, was right across the hall from where Jodi Arias, that trial happened. And they said that it was just insanity for that trial, that there was people waiting in the lobbies outside. There was television networks that were building sets, holding live programming out there. Nancy Grace had a trailer that people would wait up for autographs. It was just like a rock concert every day for these trials. A little bit about the victim. Travis Alexander was born July 28, 1977 in California. When he was 8, he moved in with his paternal grandparents. After his father's death in 1997, his 7 siblings were taken in by their paternal grandmother. He joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He performed stand-up comedy under the alter ego of Eddie Snell. He was a salesman and motivational speaker for prepaid legal services. Jodi Arias was born July 9th, 1980 in California. She attended school until 11th grade. She dropped out. She was an aspiring photographer and worked odd jobs until she got a sales position with Prepaid Legal. Arias and Alexander met in September 2006 at a work conference in Las Vegas. Arias converted to the LDS Church, of which Alexander was a member, and he baptized her in November of 2006, so 2 months after they met. It happened in California. They began dating the following February, and she moved to Mesa to be closer to him. But in April of 2008, she moved to California, lived with her grandparents. They dated intermittently for about a year and a half in a long-distance relationship, taking turns traveling. Even when they were even when Alexander was in a different relationship, he and Arias would sext each other. Now why does that matter? This became part of the trial. These very salacious messages were being read on national television, and videos and calls were being played in court, and it was quite graphic. Alexander's friends who knew Arias and observed them together reportedly had a negative opinion of her, stating their relationship was unusually tumultuous and that Arias's brother was, or her behavior was worrying. Alexander Travis was killed June 4th while in the shower, 27 stab wounds, as I said. Medical examiner Kevin Horn testified that Alexander's jugular vein, common artery, and trachea were slashed, and he had defensive wounds on his hands. He further testified that he might have been dead when the gunshot was inflicted and that the back wounds were shallow. His death was ruled a homicide. And that's just kind of the background. So this was a huge, huge case. Huge. Biggest case Arizona's seen since, even bigger than Daybell, but Daybell would be the next biggest one that they've seen in recent memory. And the judge in this case allowed cameras. The prosecutor, Juan Martinez, was quite the showman in court. He really knew how to captivate the jury. He did the case by himself without any notes, from what I hear, at least when he'd get up and present. Played to the cameras. Kirk Nurmi, who I've interviewed here, was Jodi Arias' defense attorney. And it was must-see TV. I don't know if you watched any of it. I personally didn't, but it's all on YouTube. You can go back and watch it all again. But it was quite a trial. And then she took the stand. And I believe she was on the stand for 9 days, which is crazy if you think about it. She took the stand. She did media interviews. She was not afraid to talk to the press. In fact, Nancy Grace has told me that Jodi Arias flipped her off one morning in court because Nancy Grace was all over this story, as you can imagine Nancy Grace would be. So I want to bring in Brianna Whitney before I do that. And with that, let's bring in Brianna Whitney. I had a chance to talk with her earlier this week. That's why I'm wearing a different shirt. Here is Brianna to tell me all about her documentary. And joining me now, Brianna, the woman, the journalist behind this incredible documentary. Brianna, you must have been working on this for a long time, just looking at the quality of the work.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was about a year. We started research in November of last year. We actually went back and looked at our dates on our phone, and when we started in a notes app with just certain names and everything, and it was a year ago. So it's been a long time kind of gathering all of this. And we were doing this during the Lori Vallow Daybell trial here. I know you and I talked about it a little bit. So between the trial and the sentencing, or both trials and the sentencing, we were doing these interviews and working on this.
What gave you the idea to go back and look at the case?
So I think in this day and age, people are so fascinated, obviously, with true crime stories, and continuously on Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Prime, you name it. There is a fascination in high profile cases, whether they're solved or not solved. And I think that there was an interest in going back and examining a case, but from a different angle. And when we were looking at kind of how can we up what we're doing already from the documentaries we've done before, we thought, well, let's take on the biggest crime case that Arizona has, one that a lot of people know, and what could we do now that would be different? And that encompassed two different things. One, her psychology and the way that she was from a teenager until now, and her writings that kind of led you to believe she had certain psychological mental health issues, diving more into that, but like analyzing her writing, journal, things like that. The other part is how she is in prison right now. Nobody had done anything on what she's doing. And the thing is, she's writing a lot. Like, we know so much about her life in prison right now because she's talking about it. And she also ended up emailing me as well. And so those two things combined made it kind of the perfect recipe to re-examine the case from a different lens.
Okay, most of the people watching this, I believe, know the case, or at least know some parts about it. But there may be a few
Sure.
that have never heard of this. Give us kind of the base background as to what happened with this case.
Totally. So this was back in 2008. Travis Alexander was this really well-liked guy. He was Mormon by faith, and he worked for Legal Shield. He was doing sales, and often at conferences he would give presentations, even sometimes motivational speeches, just a really outgoing guy. Through his work, he met Jodi Arias, who was also working with the company, and these two really hit it off right away. But the thing is, Jodi was not Mormon. She was a lot different than the other women that Travis had been dating, and he was really looking for his forever wife at this point. He was 30 years old. Jodi was not that, but tried to be that for him. and they had this really tumultuous on and off again relationship. They were hiding the fact that they were having sex from their friends. And the thing is, Travis wanted somebody who was going to be that wife for him. And I don't think he ever really saw Jodi like that because of what she brought to his life, but he still engaged in that with her. It was really toxic, really toxic. And then this all came to a head in June of 2008 when Travis eventually is found dead, stabbed 27 times, and shot in his shower in his Mesa, Arizona home. He was dead in there for a few days before anybody noticed. He was supposed to go on a trip to Cancun, and Jodi was going to Utah. Ends up being a digital camera that ends up having all of this damning evidence, DNA that also links her to the crime scene, and she's eventually arrested for his murder. That was already a big deal. She was very pretty. He was very well known. So that already kind of gained that international attention, so to speak. And then it just exploded when you finally got to the trial, because the trial was probably one of the most chaotic and salacious trials in U.S. history. It was televised every day. It went on for months and months and months. She was on the stand for 18 days. I mean, this was just a complete media spectacle. And that's why so many people know it today.
Yeah, I have heard stories about the trial outside. Was there 2 trials or 2 sentences?
Yeah, so there was one trial in terms of guilty or not guilty for the murder. But then, yes, there were multiple death penalty trials, so to speak, the penalty phase, because there was a hung jury multiple times. And that is why she is now in life in prison with no possibility of parole. But yeah, she was up for the death penalty for this crime.
I see. And that there were people that just swarmed to the courthouse to try to get in the courtroom, even outside, like in front of the courthouse doors, right? Like just all over the place.
All over the place. I've never seen anything like this. I guess maybe the thing you could compare the most in this day and age now would be the Karen Reed case in terms of a lot of supporters being outside. But the difference, though, was that I mean, just around the corner in the Cityscape area, which has like food and restaurants, HLN was setting up full cable shows, like full talk show sets, almost look like a concert, to broadcast live from here. People were, everywhere, laying outside, standing in line. They were taking lottery numbers to get in, and then just screaming. I mean, people were so passionate about this case. I've never seen anything like this, really. I don't think this would happen in the same way today. But yeah, going back in the archival footage, it was honestly shocking, especially since we just got done with the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. That was high profile too. And there was people that watched the trial and showed up. But this was a different level of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think it is? I mean, why do you think people were camped out there every day and the whole world was watching this?
I think there was a couple reasons. So one, cable news and cable TV was really popular at the time. This is in 2013 that the trial went on. And so there was a way for people to watch live and they became invested in it. So I think you had that. A few other things. This was so salacious. They held nothing back. There were audio sex calls played between the two. There were emails and text messages that were really raunchy between them. And I think that just in and of itself also grabbed people who wanted to know more, whether they were invested for the right reasons or not. She was really pretty. A lot of people thought that she couldn't have possibly done this. Maybe she was abused. She had gone on air and done multiple interviews from her time in jail to the trial. And she changed her story 3 different times. So that in and of itself, too, people were like, oh my gosh, now she's saying she was abused. At first she wasn't there. Then there were intruders in the house. It was like this whirlwind of different stories. So I think that also played into it. And then you had all the people who really wanted justice for Travis. And it just kind of made for this wild kind of movie-like situation. Somebody described it as the Super Bowl of court. And I would agree. That's kind of what it felt like. On top of that the courtroom itself, the trial itself, was wild to follow. I mean, the prosecutor was yelling back and forth with people on the stand, like people who were just trying to talk about their relationship with Travis or their relationship with Jodi. He was, very, very boisterous. Then her defense team was going down that abuse hole and that path. And I think people were curious how they were going to go about that. So it made for this kind of drama that people wanted to tune into live every day. And I think we just basically saw that shift from cable TV at the time to now probably the same kind of people who really enjoy watching live streams of trials on YouTube and things like that. So I think it was kind of this perfect recipe for something where people literally could not get enough of this.
Right. All the elements of a story that can draw you in.
Yeah.
I've heard stories about just how good the prosecutor was. That didn't he do it like by himself and with no notes, and would get up there and really captivated the jury and the audience?
Totally. And I mean, watching it now back, I think it's an interesting strategy. It was very hostile, but in interviewing the jurors, they felt that this is what the case needed. And his tone and delivery really resonated with the jurors in terms of maybe how gruesome this was. And that might have been a challenge he was up against from the start. You know, people were looking at her and thinking maybe she was innocent. Like, by just looking at the case without knowing the details, it is hard to look at her and think, wow, she was capable of stabbing somebody 27 times and shooting them. And so I think he kind of had an uphill battle, so to speak, a little bit. And he took that challenge for sure and was like, no, I'm going to show you guys why she's such an awful person. But there were people that didn't agree with how he went about it. And in the end, both of the main attorneys in this case, both Juan Martinez as the prosecutor and Kirk Nurmi as the defense attorney, were disbarred over actions and activities that happened during this trial, which is something we rarely see too.
Wow. So in your documentary, how did you get people to talk to you, and who are we going to hear from?
Sure. So some people are talking for the first time, and I think that was important because there is so much out there in years past on Jodi. And so we were like, all right, if we're going to take kind of the psychological angle, where do we start? There is one of her high school classmates that talks for the first time. We don't use his name or his face, but he gives this really, really interesting story that I think sets up this entire pattern for Jodi's life. I think some people thought maybe Travis and hers relationship was the toxic one. There were other boyfriends that testified of hers that said she wasn't like this, but I don't think it was just Travis. I think Travis was just the last one. So there's a high school classmate that kind of sets up these kind of eerie things that happened when she was a teen. We have multiple jurors who are talking. They were fantastic. They really take you behind the scenes in the deliberation room, what they were thinking, both with the guilty verdict and then also during those death penalty deliberations, which was really fascinating to hear them talk about it. They are very emotional, both of them, about what happened during that phase still today. We have a police officer, a lieutenant with Mesa PD at the time, who's never spoken. He was in charge of the scene overnight. So when they found Travis, his detectives went in, and then he had to basically start collecting all the information from there. Two of Travis's best friends that were also friends with Jodi are kind of some of our main interviews that have really been fighting for Travis for so many years. They're pretty affected still by all of this, but they're very close with Travis's family. And so his family knows that we're doing this, supportive. Who else do we talk to? One of Jodi's cellmates in jail. That was fascinating. A former reporter who covered this all from the crime itself through the trial. He's really, really knowledgeable and fascinating. Travis's roommate, who actually was living on the other side of the wall of where Travis was and didn't know for 5 days that Travis was. I know. Yeah, there might be one or two other interviews, but a lot.
You traveled for this too, Brianna. I remember seeing your Instagram. You were in Utah. I'm like, hey, you're just down the street.
I know. That was actually my first time in Utah, and I was really impressed. I really liked Salt Lake City. But yeah, we went to Utah, and that's because a lot of the people that Travis worked with were also on the team out of Salt Lake City at the time. And so the way that this would work a lot, they would either have conferences or meetings in different places, and they would all participate in like activities together, like fun things. And so when they go to Utah, they'd often like four-wheel or ATV. And so one of his longtime friends and coworkers lives outside Salt Lake, and she's a huge part of this documentary. So yeah, we went to Salt Lake. We also went to California, to the San Diego area. And Travis is from Riverside and like the San Diego area as well. And so his upbringing was in Southern California. So he has quite the ties there. He's actually buried in California as well. And so that's where one of his best friends, who's really close with the family, she lives there. And so we went to go talk to her there.
And that kind of can give the viewers an idea. The fact this was not just a project that was thrown together with, quick Zoom
Yeah.
interviews and B-roll video from the past. Brianna's been working on this for a year and has really put the time into it. What would you say, Brianna, surprised you the most?
So there's this one line that Sky, the best friend, tells us, that Jodi looked at them at the end of sentencing and says he was alive when I slit his throat. And I thought that was shocking because when I heard that, I was like, well, that just completely undermines a lot of the defense that she was abused and that she could not remember the crime, that she blacked out. But clearly, if she's saying something like that, she blacked out. So I thought that was shocking to me. The other thing that I found really surprising, and maybe it shouldn't be surprising, but I meticulously went through her journal, and I mean, writing after writing after writing after writing, both before the murder and after the murder. I believe that this now became an intentional alibi with what she was trying to say she was doing while she was killing Travis, and then intentionally describing sad emotions on the back end. However, how she writes then, years ago, decades ago, is exactly how she still writes today. And I know this because she is running an exclusive blog from prison, and she writes about so many different topics, all of her thoughts, and it is the exact same style and the same tone. And I think it comes off a little bit righteous. She tries to come off very sweet, and she did with me too. But it comes off a little bit like, I can teach you all of these things. And it's the exact same way. And I think it kind of just shows maybe that a tiger doesn't change their stripes.
Yeah, wow. And the fact, too, that she's willing to engage with a reporter and
She wasn't
email
supposed
you.
to.
She wasn't
Yeah,
supposed
that was
to.
big no. Yeah. So here's how this happened. I obviously, number one goal was going to be to try to interview Jodi, and especially if we were going to do something about her psychology, like why the best person to interview is Jodi.
Yeah.
But the Arizona prisons can be different here. While we do have access sometimes to jailhouse interviews before people are convicted and sentenced, the prison typically does not allow us to do video interviews like that. So typically our options are on the phone, or they have to grant us a video visit, which they often don't. So my hope was maybe to talk to her on the phone. And I reached out to her appeals team, and this is now another appeal. She's already lost one. She's now in the middle of another appeal. And they were pretty angry that we were doing a project at all. And we're like, she cannot talk. We don't want to talk. We don't give any comment, nothing. And that was kind of, I mean, they shut that down. And so I was like, well, all right, I'm used to messaging with inmates for my job. And let's just try it. Let's just see. Let's email her and see what happens. And I didn't hear back for months. And honestly, I didn't expect to, because I knew, the appeals team was just so adamant that she was not going to talk. And then all of a sudden it was a weekend, I think it was a weekend morning, and I open up my email and it's like, you have a new message from Jodi. And I'm thinking, well, she was definitely not supposed to respond to me. And so I open it, and basically she's reiterating that she can't talk to me due to her legal team, and she's giving me kind of the details as to why. But then she's really happy that I was reading her blog, and she asked me to kind of submit certain topics and questions for her that she would consider writing about, and all of these things. And she felt really bad, and so I didn't hear back from her again. I did submit some questions to her that I kind of came up with, thinking maybe she would answer some questions that were a little bit more broad about her overall life, her overall psychology, mental health. I have not heard back yet, but I never say never. Especially with Jodi, she likes talking to people, and I want to learn more about her. Like, I would love to do more with her. Obviously, the appeals team is doing what they do, but yeah, that's kind of where she should not have emailed me back. And I know, without saying it, I'm sure they're not pleased.
Well, and that means she's very aware of the project, and I imagine somehow maybe she'll, if not see it, hear about it.
I wouldn't be surprised if she's able to watch at least what airs on television here this weekend, because I know they get TV in the jails or in the prisons, jails and the prisons. And so if she's watching at the right time or they have the channel on, then yes, I think she would be able to see it. But based on her blog, she seems to have access to quite a bit. She definitely knows a lot about AI. She said she listens to podcasts and things. So I'm curious how much access she actually has, maybe more than we think.
Right. Okay, I haven't had a chance to. We've spoken about you meeting Lori Vallow. I want to ask you briefly. We haven't had a chance to discuss this publicly, but what were your takeaways chatting with Lori those couple of times when she was down in Arizona?
You know, gosh, Lori is just so funny. Lori and Jodi have some similar traits.
Yeah, when you're saying that she wasn't supposed to write you back, but she did, that's very similar to Lori Vallow. Her attorney said, don't talk to reporters. She doesn't care. She's going to do what she wants to do.
Totally. And Lori may be even more willing to skirt the rules, so to speak, than Jodi, but their personalities to me are similar. I think if I were to sit down with Jodi, it would be the same feeling that it was with Lori, which to me, now I'm curious too, because I think she was maybe different with men than she is with women. But when I got in there, it was she's pretty friendly to me off the bat, and almost seemed kind of giggly, but was like, well, we're going to be friends and buddies and this and that, and I'm going to smile at you in the courtroom and all those things. And of course, I'm like, okay. But yeah, I felt like she thought that we were friends and therefore was willing to sit down more. I think she did not like the last interview we did, which was that partial video to phone thing from the jail. Because I asked her more questions, she decided she didn't want to answer at that point. And then I feel like she got a little more feisty with me. But yeah, it was an odd experience. I think the takeaway that I had was how incredibly tragic and sad that her life is what it is today, and that she did to those kids and the people in her life what she did. Had she not gone down that horrific path, I feel like she could have been likable. And I think people did like her back in the day. But, it is scary to see where she's at now, and the brainwashing that I believe has happened to her to get her to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Where can people watch the documentary on Jodi? Because it's out now, right? On YouTube, at least.
Yep. YouTube's coming out Thursday. So yes, it's called Obsessed, Unraveling Jodi Arias. It's on YouTube. It's on the AZ Family YouTube page. But if you just type in Obsessed, Unraveling Jodi Arias, it'll come right up. And if people don't want to watch on YouTube, they can also find it on Roku, on the AZ Family app as well. It's already out there too. So there's multiple ways for people to watch it. And yeah, I so appreciate you doing this with me, because I love your take on cases like this. Obviously, we cover a similar type of cases. And I think you would be just as fascinated by the Jodi Arias case as I was.
Right. Yeah, it is. I remember I was in college at the time, or I had just started in my first job in television. And obviously, the whole LDS connection and the whole, it really captivated people in Idaho and Utah all over the place. So yeah, I got Brianna shared with me a sneak peek, so I've seen it. It's a great show, especially if you're interested in the case. Even if you're not, it's something to go back and watch. And there's some new stuff in there. Go to the AZ Family YouTube channel. It's there tonight, right after we're done with Courtroom Insider. You can go watch it. And Brianna, good work. We'll look forward to seeing what you have next.
Yeah, thank you as always. I'm sure we'll have you on our show again soon. And I always love talking to you about cases. So we appreciate it over here.
Sure. Take care. There you go. The name of the documentary again is Obsessed, Unraveling Jodi Arias. It's available now if you want to go watch it on AZ Family YouTube. My thanks to Brianna for chatting with me and filling us in about the documentary and her thoughts about Lori Vallow Daybell. I want to thank you for watching, and I want to thank newspapers.com. You want the details about this case or any other? Newspapers.com. They've got your info. In fact, I got another great email from somebody who told me, I want to share it with you, that they were going to sign up because, oh, here we go. Somebody, Irene, sent me an email about It's quite personal, so I don't know if I want to read it to you all, but she had a family member who may have been the victim of a crime back in the day, and she's learning about it now. It was the early 90s. Times were different. And so she said she's going to look up the case on newspapers.com to refresh her memory and try to connect with people who may have been involved. A lot of times you can go back and read old news stories and find out who reporters interviewed and maybe connect with them. Newspapers.com has all that. Remember, their sale goes through Sunday that you can give 30% off a gift membership to somebody in your life. So go get Christmas shopping done early. I'm trying to do that this year. I'm trying to really get it done. My wife sent me a bunch of suggestions that I'm like, okay, buy. Then I don't have to worry about it or think about it. And Erica also has a birthday on December 29th. So not only do we have Christmas on the 25th, but 4 days later, we're celebrating her birthday. But that's okay. Thank you for watching. Here's where I'm at during the week. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Nate Eaton Reporter. I'm on X, and you can also find me on YouTube, which is likely where you're watching me. If you haven't subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And you can follow us along. Tomorrow night on Courtroom Insider, we will have the mother of a missing young man who has vanished 2 years ago this month. And they found his truck and his dogs, and he is gone. She's going to share with us the story and how you can help or at least get the word out. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, here on Courtroom Insider. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I'm Nate Eaton. Have a good night.